the Adam Messer Show, and I am your host, Adam Messer, and I have a very special guest today. My friend Patrick Roper is here today with us. How are you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing great. It's awesome to be back on again after so long.
I know you've been on my show, and then you've been on Ed Susovich's show, and man, we've got a lot to talk about, a lot to catch up, and everybody listening in, Sebastian's not in the studio today, but luckily I have a couple of recordings that I'm going to play of his stuff. So I'm gonna take that away. And Patrick, you remember Sebastian played live music for us in the studio, so I'm gonna play some of his stuff. He's actually he's actually working on putting together like an LP. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Oh, cool.
So here it is. Here's one of the new ones that he's working on. And that was Sebastian Messer, everybody playing some of his new stuff. And like I said, Patrick, I know you probably couldn't hear that because of the way the aux board is, but it'll be in the podcast. So
Okay.
yeah, it'll be you'll be able to hear it there. So yeah, that's something I found out recently, that my guests can't hear the music that plays through the aux. So just kind of one of those things we have to deal with. Normally you'd be in the studio with
I
me.
figured it was something technical.
Yeah, normally you'd be in the studio with me, but to be safe, I haven't had any guests in the studio since the pandemic broke out. So
Yeah.
what's new with you, man?
Well, I've actually been shockingly busy this year, which is kind of weird in some ways, considering everything that's been going on. I've managed to book about 5 gigs this year.
Oh wow!
Which is shocking.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to ask you to do like a little introduction of yourself. Everybody, Patrick Roper is an actor, and he does among other things. So when he's talking about booking a gig, he's talking about acting roles. So could you give the audience like a little intro for the folks that are listening that might not know you?
Sure. So I'm originally from Seattle, born and raised, and I was an actor there for a good chunk of my sort of teens through 20s. I mostly did theater and then sort of gravitated eventually into independent film back when we were actually still using film. And then I took a break for a while and did other things with my life. I was a kilt maker for about 20 years and retired from that, and then traveled around a lot, and then ended up settling here in Savannah and took up acting again. So I've been working primarily in the film industry since I moved here, and have managed to get quite a number of nice little parts in a number of the local things that have been filming here. So
I think it's really cool. Patrick and I met in 2014 on the set of Killer Fish Productions. It was called Back to One. It was like the 48-hour thing that they did. And Christian Hawkins was that was his project and all, and Jen Hawkins. and yeah, so we met, and you were one of the actors in the production, and then I did like set photography, and it was a wild weekend. That was fun.
Yeah, I've done, geez, 3 or 4 of those 48s.
And since
That
then,
was
you've
my,
like really grown into, like you've been in some major Hollywood productions.
yeah, I mean, they've, yeah, it's definitely grown. I started out when I got back into this. Since I had been out of it for a while, I went to classes and got my sea legs again, and then sort of launched myself out there, and I did a lot of, I've done some student films, and I've done 48-hour, which are fun if nobody out there has ever done that. You basically you get a bunch of like a character and a prop and a line that you have to say, and then or in a genre, and then you have to write, direct, produce, act, to do the whole production in 48 hours over the course of a weekend, and then after a couple of weeks, it gets shown to an audience. It's a lot of fun, a lot of hard work. It's not for the faint of heart.
Right,
um,
right. And you got to
but
be in it, really. I mean, like if you're going to commit to that, you have to really be in it for the duration. You can't just kind of bounce out.
yeah. I mean, I think some people will get into it and not know
Yeah,
how
they're
hard
like,
it
what
actually
did I
is, and
get
then
into?
freak out and leave. But most people, for the most part, around here have been really awesome. It's cool to see what teams have been put together and how they have grown over the course of several years. Because we really have a lot. We have several really good teams here in Savannah that
Yeah,
produce some great stuff. So,
yeah. So
but
yeah, you said that you had booked like 5 gigs this year.
mhm.
Can you talk about any of them,
I
or can you talk about like
can.
anything that came out this year?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk. I can talk a bit about stuff. So the last time I was on the show, I had already shot, let's see, Killerman, Emperor, and Florida Girls, but none of those had aired yet, so I couldn't really chat about them. So now that those are all out, I can talk more in depth about all those. Killerman came out last summer, and that was an occasion where I actually filmed a scene with great character actor Zlatko Boric. He's I guess now he's a Danish citizen, but he um, is from Croatia originally. So, and I've spent a lot of time in Croatia, so I got to hang out and chat with him a bunch about that, which was a nice bonding moment for us. But in any event, I got to do a great scene with him, and that unfortunately got cut from the film,
Mm.
which happens. Then I shot Emperor in the summer of 2018, and that was actually a major supporting role. I play the kind of one of the main antagonists in that film, and that currently is out you can see it on like Amazon and Stars right now. So go check that out. And then Florida Girls, which was the television series that was being filmed here, they filmed in October of 2018. And
Let me ask you about Florida Girls. Was William Tokarski in that one too?
yeah, he
Yeah,
played the sort of stepdad.
I thought he was. I haven't seen the series, but I'm friends with William, and he would frequently come down to Savannah and visit his son. And really great guy. He also played a lot of. It's kind of like a little cult classic. Too Many Cooks on Adult
Yeah,
Swim.
yeah.
But I thought you two were in that show together, and I was like, oh, look at my friends, like going out there rocking and rolling.
Yeah, we never actually worked together, but I definitely saw him around set quite often. But yeah, that was definitely a lot of fun. That was a cool thing because I originally read for just a 1-part gig, just one scene, and they liked what I did. The creators, Laura Chin, who was also the main character in that show. She liked what I did so much that they decided to expand my part through the rest of the series. So I ended up with 4 episodes on that.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that just kind of goes to show you, like, you know, if you go in and you just do your best, it can lead to other things.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that part is a very. It's funny because I play a straight man basically in that, so I'm just very monotone, and so by comparison to all the wild stuff that's going on around me, I'm sort of this thing that these wacky situations are bouncing off of. So it's kind of the juxtaposition is funny.
Yeah, you're kind of like just checked out, and like I'm just here, get through the day, punch out.
I based that character off of Ben Stein.
Yeah,
that just sort of
Bueller.
Absolute dry Bueller for everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is really cool. Oh man. So you booked like 5 gigs this year. You got those ones that you were talking about that have already come out. I know the whole industry's just kind of changed up. I mean, with the pandemic and all. How has it affected you?
Well, I mean, certainly it's nerve-wracking because you have to keep up with all the new stuff as it comes, and obviously everything immediately shut down. So back in March, Emperor was supposed to have a red carpet premiere in LA, and I was going to go fly out to that and do that whole thing.
Yeah.
And they changed the schedule. I think as theaters were starting to close down, at first I think they were trying to see maybe they can do that earlier. So they rescheduled it for like another week or 2 earlier, or then they're going to try and do it, and then it all fell apart. And they canceled everything, and flights were being canceled anyway. So the entire country sort of shut down just as that was about ready to happen. And they, as most people probably remember, like everything that was coming out at that time was pretty much on hold.
Right. The one that really stuck with me was like Wonder Woman 84.
Yeah.
Like I've been honestly, I love, gosh. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of her name. Gal Gadot. I can't think.
Oh yeah.
I love the way she plays Wonder Woman. Well, as a kid, I used to watch like all the superhero shows, like the Wonder Woman, and Hulk and all that. And I just love the way that she plays it. And that was one of the big ones for me that I was like, oh man, I can't wait to go see it, because I usually don't go to the theaters a lot. I go maybe once or twice a year, and that was one of the ones I was looking forward to going to the theater. But yeah, so the premiere got moved. And of course, the red carpet layout was canceled, and
we so they ended up. Yeah, they were trying to figure out when to show it. If they were going to be able to get back to the theaters, and eventually they did what I think was very wise, and I think what a lot of people a lot of studios have figured out, which is let's just cut our losses on the theater side of it and just put it on streaming.
Right.
So they launched it. I think it came out, I can't remember the exact date of it. It was back in October, and they put it on several platforms, the Amazon being the big one.
Yeah.
And then it just, like I said, like I was just saying, it just came out on Stars, I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Oh, that's awesome. Hold that thought for just a second. I got to do the station ID. Hey, everybody, you're listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. This is the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer. My special guest today is Patrick Roper, and we're just talking about, acting and how things have kind of affected the industry and stuff like that. Actually, this week, Patrick, I think it was this week that Warner Media announced that they were going to release all the upcoming movies the same day as theaters through HBO Max.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because I was like, oh, okay, because I hadn't really heard of HBO Max. I've got the other streaming services or whatever, but They were running a special, so I went ahead and got like a 6-month subscription, and I think I know it's really rough for theaters. I know that, but I think that is the right now with everything. I think that is the best answer for movies, for film, because otherwise like they were hoping that they would be able to release these movies later on and whatever, but since the coronavirus hasn't really died down. I mean, it's just not safe to have large crowds gathering and stuff like that. And even like here in the studio, like I've always loved having guests in the studio with me, but I switched over to doing phone calls, and you only live a couple blocks down the street,
Yeah.
so just to be safe. So what's your take on all of that, man? I mean, what do you think about all of that?
I have my own sort of health issues that I need to be very wary of.
Mm-hmm.
So even with that, I mean, I keep up as much as I can with my own doctors, with reading science and stuff like that. So I like to err to the side of caution. I've had a number of friends, very close friends, who have been horribly affected by this, including some deaths and whatnot. So I take it seriously. At the same time, I'm not one to let my life be completely frozen.
Yeah.
So because you got to function and you got to do things, and I'm very much I'm a solution kind of guy. So I'm interested in people that come up with solutions and not people that come up with more problems.
Right.
So one of the things that I got booked for this year, and I can't really talk too much about the exact thing, but I did do a gig at Tyler Perry Studios when they opened up over the summer with their new production protocols.
Oh, cool.
And that was very involved. And, I had a lot of people that were asking me, how comfortable I felt doing that. And I was also looking over everything they were doing and kind of going, okay, where are the problems? Where are the where are the things that they're they thought through everything. They really thought in very fantastic detail about everything that needed to be done. So I felt very safe going into that, and they very much treated every day on the set, and they hammered this home. It's like, we are approaching this as though there is COVID on this facility somewhere. And there probably is. So just treat everything like that. Treat everything like you can potentially catch it from something. And if you take all the steps to prevent that, you'll be fine. And
I like that because like I do industrial electrical work, and having to be around other people, you have to work together, and you have to take precautions. Close contact, we have to keep social distance and wear our masks, and of course washing hands, making sure we wash our hands really well, and staying, honestly, there's all kinds of things that you can do, like staying hydrated, staying healthy as you can helps your immune system, but you can't avoid contact with germs. I mean, you just can't, or bacteria and stuff like that. And we did Josh Vasquez and I was talking to you before we started the show, but we did a couple little things for our production company we started called Dead Pixel Pictures, and what we've done is the same thing. We've tried to practice social distancing. We've had the hand sanitizer there. We asked everybody to wear a mask when they're not on filming like live or whatever, and just try to maintain it. And I know it's a weird thing to say, but I agree with you. You have to still live your life, but you have to be smart about I hate to sound funny here, but mitigating risk.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things. You do have to live life, but it's also kind of like, well, I don't go out as much as I used to, and if I do go out, I want to make sure that I'm not sitting around like a bunch of people that I don't know, in
Yeah.
a close proximity.
Yeah, you sit down somewhere and bring out your old handy wipes and wipe the surface in front of you.
Well, it's kind of like with the theaters, sitting in a movie theater. I love, going to the movies like once or twice a year, but I wouldn't feel comfortable sitting in, chairs within a few feet of people sitting in front of me or behind me or, to the side of me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I carry around a tiny little pocket-sized squirt bottle of straight alcohol, and
yeah.
I kind of use that for my basic sanitizing, of everything around me. And that seems to have worked. So far, knock on wood.
Yeah.
The nice thing, like with up at Tyler Perry, and he did very much prove that the system they put in place works. Now he has a very extraordinary situation with his studio that most studios can't replicate, which is that his studio is basically self-contained. We all stayed there in a quarantine. They called it the quarantine bubble. So the second you took all the tests, you went through all the processing, which started a couple of weeks before we even arrived. I think I had 6 or 7 tests, I think, in the entire stay that I was there, and I was there for 10 days. So they brought us in, and we couldn't leave that space. But I mean, it's a huge compound. It's like 325 acres or something. It's massive.
Yeah, I heard about it. It's huge.
Yeah, there's a lot of space. It's an old army base. So.
Oh wow.
So there's a lot of space there, and they brought in some like army barracks basically, and put the crew up in there, and then there's a bunch of houses that are on that property that used to be like the officers' homes, and that's where they put up the main actors. And so there was like 2 of us in a house, and these were huge houses. They're like 3,000 square feet, just massive houses. So
yeah,
although we certainly, I'd hang out with my roommate there, and we would talk, but we still maintained, distance, and we'd wear masks, and we just spent a lot of time outside on the porch, just in the fresh air, just kind of sitting at opposite ends of the porch, communicating. Yeah. I mean, his so that quarantine bubble was great because they confirm very rapidly. They're testing you, and you come into it, and they actually found over the course of a week, because they brought in 2 different waves of people. The first wave, they found 2 people coming in that had COVID. Now, when you come into the situation, they quarantine everybody until your test clears.
Right.
So we're all sitting down for a couple of days, kind of in our rooms, and word came in that they found 2 people that had COVID. So they, took care of them and made sure that they got off property, got medical attention, cleaned everything. They contact traced everything, cleaned everything that they had any contact with, tested anybody that they had contact with. And that worked out great. And then a week later, they brought in another wave of people. And again, they found 2 people coming in that ended up having COVID, did the same process. So they were able to contain anything coming in and keep it, for the most part, out, which was incredible. So there was nothing got through, which was fantastic. And as far as I know, because they shot the show that I was on, and they shot, after we wrapped, they shot another one, and I think a couple more. I don't know that they had any other incidents after that. I think they had gotten everything down so well by that point that, I didn't hear at least of any additional people coming in that had it. So it worked.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. What's your take on like the future? Like, because eventually this is going to hopefully blow over sooner or later, but it's eventually going to blow over. And what do you feel like is going to be set life after like a post-pandemic set life?
Well, the industry has very largely pretty much I mean, there are certainly stuff is rolling back in, and they're all having their own procedures on how they're doing things. But it hasn't certainly started as much as it was before. So they're testing the waters, but largely the consensus is that nothing's going to return to anything resembling normal until a vaccine hits.
Right.
And, again, knock on wood, supposedly that'll be within a couple of months. So, and, obviously it's going to take months and months and months to make sure that as many people have gotten the vaccine as humanly possible. So returning back to full on normal, realistically, if we're being kind of conservative about it, I would think it would be probably either middle of next year to late next year. Just a guess, obviously. There are other things that have been talked about that I think are really interesting. For instance, the way that the show The Mandalorian films on, with it's entirely, for those that don't know, that entire show is filmed on a very large soundstage with nothing but LED screens for the background, and it runs off of a game engine. So as they're
which is incredible, by the way, to think about.
Is fake.
Yeah, I think it's incredible though to think about it. I mean, like, that just shows you how far technology has come in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah. But the nice thing about this has been discussed, is that, you could, because it's such a contained environment, you can go anywhere you want in that environment. But since it's contained, they can do all the cleaning, everything else that they need to do. So, and, this season 2 was, I think they managed to sneak that in right before quarantine started happening. So they didn't
you remember when they were
that.
talking about doing a Boba Fett movie, and then they canceled it, and everybody was so angry about it, and then they're like, I think that's what they were doing, was they were filming The Mandalorian, and they were just kind of, the rumor was out there it was going to be a Boba Fett movie, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, I think everybody wanted that to happen, and there were rumors that it was going to happen, and then I think Disney canceled that plan somewhere along the line, and then when they decided to develop a TV show, I remember it was super secret. They weren't telling anybody what it was going to be about,
right?
Until we started seeing pictures of it, and then they explained that no, it's not going to be Boba Fett. It's going to be a different character. I think it's
not Yoda. It's Baby Yoda.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is absolutely. What Favreau and Filoni have been doing with that show is brilliant. They understand the source material so well, and not just the Star Wars universe source material, but they also understand the inspirations behind it.
Yeah.
And they have done a great job of bringing in these throwbacks to samurai films and gunslinger movies and spaghetti westerns and all that stuff. So they, kudos to them. They figured it out and knew exactly what that whole show is about, and what that whole world is about. So
nice. Well, we've got to do our station break, Patrick. I really appreciate you being here with us, and we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes, everybody.
This portion of WRUULP Savannah Soundings programming is made possible by listeners like you and Brighter Day Natural Foods. Brighter Day is celebrating its 40th year serving the Savannah community with produce, vitamins, and supplements, and a deli and juice bar. Brighter Day is located at 1102 Bull Street at the south end of Forsyth Park. More information available at 912-236-4703 or brighterdayfoods.com.
What does it mean when we say that WRUU is a community radio station? It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming. And it doesn't just mean that we are a voice for the community. It also means that we are counting on the community to keep us going. And you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to wruu.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation. And thank you for supporting Savannah's community radio station, 107.5 FM.
The Live Oak Public Library System offers local residents access to hundreds of thousands of movies, television programs, albums, audiobooks, ebooks, and digital comic books for free on your streaming television and mobile devices through the Hoopla app. Supported devices include Roku, Fire, Apple TV, iPhone, and Android, among others. The selection is vast. All you'll need is your library card. Find the Hoopla app on your device and more information at liveoakpl.org.
WRUULP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah.
And this is Sebastian Messer, another track that he recorded, and he's just noodling on this one. So,
trying to think of what I was playing the other day.
all right, everybody, that was Sebastian Messer playing on his guitar. He's not in the studio today, but usually he is. But he had some other things that he had to take care of this afternoon. So I wanted to play some of his music because I always enjoy listening to him play, and I feel like it's a good part of the show, and I enjoy it. So, Patrick, man, I'm excited, man, to have you here with us, on the radio, and something that I really appreciate about you. Even though I don't see you all the time, you don't see me all the time. We're on Facebook together or whatever, but you have built up a group on Facebook for local actors, and you're always putting stuff on there, like interviews with different producers or directors or writers or actors and things like that. Stuff that applies to the film industry. So can you talk about that group and can you tell us kind of what the whole idea behind it and the purpose of it is?
Sure. So it's the Savannah, Georgia Actors Group, or if you punch it into Facebook, it's SGAG. And it started out just kind of as another, there were other people involved with it, and it started out as just another acting site locally, and there's a bunch of them that are out there on Facebook, and a lot of them are used just for casting for like SCAD and things like that. So I kind of looked at that. I was made an admin of that, and I kind of looked at it after a while, and I just went, well, we don't need another one of these. We need a site for education, inspiration, things that are more useful than just posting casting notices.
Yeah.
So since I had a very lengthy sort of background from the time I wanted to be an actor since I was 5, so I've been studying this stuff since I was very, very small.
Yeah.
And I got into theater more or less semi-professionally, starting at about 14 or 15 years old, and worked professionally in the theater for a number of years and doing classics, and then progressed to, like I was saying earlier, independent film at the time. So we're talking about the 90s. This was pre-digital, so everything was still being done in film. So I learned old school film making. So I kind of realized quickly that my background was a little different than what most people were going to get, which was I had the experience of having done this basically as a child into adulthood. I'd had the experience of restarting a career in my middle age. I had the experience of taking a bunch of time off between all these periods. I had the experience of taking time off when the technology shift had occurred and everything had changed. I had to relearn a lot of stuff.
Right.
Getting back into this. I mean, obviously, when I started out, there was no taping. You didn't tape auditions for the most part. You went into an office and you auditioned for somebody, and that still does. Well, right now it's not occurring, but it was occurring. The process generally, for those that don't know, is you, particularly in the Southeast here, is you tape your audition at home or at a studio somewhere, and that's your first sort of initial read. If they like that, then they bring you in for what's called a callback usually. And the callback is typically done in person. Nowadays they're doing that process on Zoom primarily, or there's a few other formats that are similar to Zoom that they're using. So that has changed definitely in the COVID world. But I realized that I had such a vastly interesting spectrum of this whole thing, and that I was in a good position to just kind of throw out what I know or ideas I had. In some ways, I've kind of told people is like, hey, some of this is probably going to end up sounding a little bit like my personal diary or professional diary. Because,
I love it though, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's just me waxing nostalgic and thinking about things and like, oh, I never thought about this, but there's this angle that you could look at doing this work.
Yeah.
And I try not to keep it. I try to, I have a very classical background, but I try to just keep it not. I want it to be fluid. I want
you don't want it being dry, where people are just
take
like, oh, the same thing. Yeah. It's you definitely very. It's very not. I don't want to say eclectic. That's not the right word for it, but it's varied. You have like a lot of different things that you offer in that group. And I remember the first time you had like a get together, where I think you had Anthony Paderewski and Mark McCullough as like guest speakers. I can't remember who the other person was, but
I think there was like Michael Gibbons and I think we were going to have Jean Marie Collins, but she had something else that called her away. So a couple of her more prominent students came and spoke on her behalf about improv work. So.
Yeah, but that was I think that's great because in the area it's so crazy because there's a lot of acting that goes on in the area, and there are some different acting coaches that offer classes and stuff like that, but there aren't very many groups like yours that are trying to say, hey, we're all trying to do the same thing. These are some of the skill sets that you should check out and learn.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I really appreciate about it because, I wouldn't consider myself an actor or I've done photography and stuff like that. But as far as like, film and storytelling, I love it because when I write, like when I write novels and, you know, whatever, short stories or whatever, it's always in my head like a movie scene, you know.
Yeah.
Like, so each scene that I go through is, you know, it's just like a movie set. So that's one of the things that I like about, you know, being able to understand, you know, the acting process or whatever, because it
Yeah,
helps me with
and
character development.
that's another thing that I try to do is try to, you know, actors, well, anybody in the film industry, but, you know, actors certainly have this reputation for being a little insular in their thinking. Sometimes, you know, it's all about me, State Park kind of, you know, thinking.
Yes, I can agree with that.
You know, and, you know, that is, in some ways, that it can be true. There are some reasons why that occurs that are actually necessary, and then there's some that are more, you know, people's egos kind of taking over. But
yeah.
you know, the reality is like there's so much that goes into theater productions and film productions, so many moving parts and so many people coming together with their own ideas. And I try, coming from the theater background, this was driven into our heads, is that there's protocols and procedures and etiquette in the way that you treat people.
Right.
Which is why I tend to tell people that are maybe exclusively film is like, you got to do theater at least once and kind of experience this concept, because it teaches you to be polite really fast.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I mean, there's plenty of people that have written rules for how a theater set is supposed to be run, you know, all the pleases, all the thank yous, every little nuance of how a theater show gets done, because you cannot, with the exception of, you know, holding the curtain for a few minutes here and there, the show has to go on. It has to go up.
Right.
So, and then it has to go up hopefully at a very specific time. Old school theater people, when they go into film, I've heard this from any of my number of friends that I know that are in production that have worked both. A lot of them say that they like working with theater actors on film sets because they tend to respect those boundaries. They respect the work. They respect that everybody's there to work, and they don't, you know, mess around.
Every role is vital.
Yeah. So for me, it's just, you know, it's just trying to help people understand that, you know, the writer has a lot that they're doing and contributing to what you're doing. The director has their own vision. Mm-hmm. You've got these camera people that have, you know, their way of looking at things. So get to know a little bit about what they all do. And that way you're not just another sort of idiot actor on the set who's looking into things and getting in their way. You know why they're asking you to do things.
I'll give an example of that, Patrick. I love that you said that, because last year when I had a chance to do a TV show, I called William Tokarski up, because I'd never been on like a big set like that. I've done some small stuff here in Savannah or whatever, but a lot of times that's, you know, it just depends on who you're working with, on how well it works or not. And I was talking to him. I was like, you know what? Do you have any tips for me? And so he spent probably like a good 45 minutes to an hour just talking with me, you know, about what some of the pointers and some of the things that I needed to know, kind of going into it raw and green. And also like your group with the posts and stuff that you make, I go through. I can't say I read 100% of it because I don't have time to do that, but I do like to follow your group, and I check out like the articles that you share, or especially I love watching the interviews with people. It's just one of my things that I like nonfiction, like audiobooks and books and stuff like that. And I love listening and talking with people about like the nuts and bolts of the process.
Yeah.
And all of it, to me, like I don't care if it's writing, directing, acting, whatever, all of that, film, movies, music, all of that in the entertainment it's storytelling. In my mind, everything is storytelling. And, it's just really interesting to see how, so for example, like your take with, Florida girls or whatever, you went in there and played the straight man, and they loved it. And it was just like, boom. And, you had that influence of, another actor. And, so we all kind of pick up these things. And I agree with you. I like working with professional people, and I like working with people who are mannerly, and that they respect others. And so, that's I'm really appreciative that you promote that, because
Yeah.
you help influence the folks in our area too.
Yeah, I mean, there's also one thing we don't, that some people, because actors will get into this, and some of them take that approach of the very actory approach, which you definitely need to study the craft of acting, and theater training again is really good at that, because theater training is kind of all about that element,
Mhm.
largely. But there are a lot of technical things involved, even in the theater. How to hit your marks, how to make sure you're standing in your light, how, upstage, downstage. Where are you standing? There's technical things you need to know
Mm-hmm.
to be able to function. Don't stand over there by the ropes, because if something fails, it'll kill you.
Or like the Mandalorian,
I mean,
don't be
there's
in the
just
background when they're shooting.
yeah, there's just stuff like that. So
I gotta do the station ID. Hold that thought for a second, because I want to
Sure.
hear. I want to hear more about that. Everybody, you listen today to WRULP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. This is the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer, here today with my special guest and friend, Patrick Roper. And so like hitting your mark, all those. Oh man, not nuanced things, but they're all production things that are necessary to make the acting better, or to make because like with lighting, if you're not standing in the right spot, or if the lighting is on the wrong spot, you're gonna have a different effect. I mean, lighting affects so much that people don't even understand, like in photography, or just anything that you're viewing. You can change the shadows, and you can change the mood just by the lighting.
It turns up a notch from theater to film exponentially in terms of the technical stuff, and there's a lot of theater actors that don't like it because of that, because there's just more to think about.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. It's a challenge, but I like a lot of what you can do in film, but there's definitely more to it. I mean, certainly there's all the same stuff. There's hitting marks, but there's like focus, for instance. If they've got that focus wound down to where you only have a couple of inches, because they want it to focus right on your eyes, when you walk into a scene, you've got to hit that mark exactly. So you've got to practice. They're going to roll it several times, because you're probably going to screw it up. There's just,
yeah.
there's no
Or they
way
might
around
change
that.
they might change midstream of, like, they thought it was going to look this way when they were going to do it, and then they're like, oh, let me try this, or whatever.
Or you'll see those those very film noir kind of setups where they just want that beam of light to hit like right across your eyes as you walk into the screen, and it's just like, that is very hard to do. It's very technical. So there's these little technical nuances, and also on the film set tends to be a lot of big heavy equipment around, so you need to know where it is, what it does, the people that control it, know not to, if there's a crane swinging around, be aware.
Yeah. There's actually the OSHA. There's an OSHA training for set. Isn't there? I can't remember what it's called, but there's the OSHA safety training. Like, I have an OSHA safety an OSHA 30 card, but I think that the bare minimum, there's like an OSHA 10 that people can take. It's either free or like maybe $20 or $25 or whatever, for just kind of a minimal awareness of, like, hey, this is, these are the safety precautions and things like that on a set.
Yeah. And hopefully, everybody on that set anyway, if there is any safety issue, everybody should be telling you about it. No matter what your level of experience is, somebody should be in your face going, okay, do not go there. Or,
or like we had a live fire. It was actually one of those gas lanterns, and then they had to have, a person standing off the side with a fire extinguisher, and, because it was set in like the 1800s, so they had like a little gas lamp or whatever, or kerosene lamp. And so they had, somebody on the side there with a fire extinguisher ready to, knock it out in case it blew up, which it didn't, but
thankfully.
right. Hey, so
Yeah.
let me ask you, what is a good resource like for someone, because you said there are like a bunch of books out there. What's a good resource for someone who wants to get into, like learning the kind of like the rules of engagement?
Frankly, if you just go online and Google, you'll find stuff for free. Like theater departments, like big theater departments all over this country, a lot of them post very similar sort of regulations of sort of theater etiquette. Like if you look at just Google theater etiquette,
Okay, Google,
and you will find a
etiquette,
ton
yeah.
of stuff that is very oriented towards that. And then you could always Google, and another thing that I try to do on the website, on the Facebook site, is there's so much when you're going into this. There's so much stuff that's like expensive. Stuff costs you money.
Yeah.
You're not going to get around that to a certain degree.
Yeah.
However, I also noticed that there's so much information out there that is absolutely free.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my goals in doing that was like being able to show people, like, look at what you can find.
Yeah.
If you look for it.
Yeah.
And,
that's one of the things I like is how you've curated different resources that people can access for free.
Yeah. But then, for books, like two of my favorite books on just the sort of mechanics of film acting. The best one out there, which is kind of the Bible of film acting even to this day, is Michael Kane's Acting in Film. There is also, by the way, you can go to YouTube, it's free. He produced a video for that back in 1987. When that book was written, and it'll look a little bit dated to anybody watching it now, but it is basically the 101 class of film acting. This is how you hit marks. This is where your eye lines need to be. This is like just basics. So that is a very good start. The other one that I have come to really love is a book that's written by Dennis Lawson. So for those that don't know, Dennis Lawson, like his biggest claim to fame, he's a Scottish actor. His biggest claim to fame is that he played Wedge Antilles in Star Wars. So he's the only X-Wing pilot to survive from the first film all the way to the last one.
Nice.
And they dubbed him over because he in the films he has this really nice, shining, spunky American accent, but they didn't think that anybody would understand his Scottish accent, so they dubbed him over. And consequently, in the most recent trilogy, if anybody has noticed, there are a lot of Scottish actors and Scottish accents in that new series, in the new trilogy, and a lot of that was an apology to Dennis Lawson. Because,
oh, wow.
Effectively, they just went, people can understand it. They absolutely can. It's just another accent. So, I think that was their way of going, we're sorry, Dennis, we dubbed you over for those years. But in any event, Dennis Lawson is Ewan McGregor's uncle. And he is still to this day, a very renowned theater and television actor, primarily in the UK. Not as well known here, obviously. He's just kind of known for Star Wars here, but he's very well known and well respected in the UK.
Oh, that's
and
great.
When Ewan McGregor graduated from theater school, he actually got really lucky and got cast on a television show. And then he had a panic attack and realized that he had no idea what working on camera was like. So he called up his uncle and said, Dennis, can you come over and tell me all about this stuff?
Wow.
So his uncle came over to his house and sat him down for 2 or 3 hours and taught him how to hit marks and taught him eye lines and all the just basic stuff.
That is awesome.
And what happened with that was that he kind of realized all of these theater actors, these great, British theater actors, were coming out and had no idea what to do when they got to a film set. So he wrote a book, and he started a series of classes. His book is, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but look it up, Dennis Lawson acting book. There's only one as far as I know.
That's fantastic, man.
And it is a massively awesome resource for like very, very technical acting skills.
That is awesome. I think that's a great breaking point too, because we got to do the break from now until 4. So I'd love to come back on that second hour. We can talk some more about that.
Yeah.
So everybody, you're tuning in today to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul.